Cool. All right. What's going on, Representative Crockett? How are you?
I feel like my head is so much bigger than yours. Um,
Let me get closer to the camera because I do got
I
a head
was
on me as well.
like,
So,
no, I'm good. It's good to see you.
yeah, no, it's good to see you too. So a little bit like your head. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Hey, let's hop in. Like Texas is enormous. Okay,
Yeah,
economically, politically, culturally. And what happens here rarely stays here. I mean, for Dallas Weekly readers and, followers who don't necessarily follow politics closely, like explain to us why this US Senate race matters not only to Texas, but also for national priorities, economic policy, and even global influence. So talk to me about this seat and why it's so important.
yeah. I think the most important word that you said was why. That is a consistent refrain that we hear. And I think that the why is more so about why are we going through this? Why is our country falling apart? Why is it that he can do this? How is it that he can do this? And the answer is that we've not had the numbers that we needed to really solidify our democracy. I remember being in the state house and fighting against the voter suppression bills that were coming through 5 years ago. And we left the state, we went to DC, and Nancy Pelosi at the time was the one that was in the speaker's seat, and she passed legislation that would have protected us from Elon Musk actually being able to buy the election. She passed legislation that would have precluded this administration from being able to gerrymander the congressional districts and continue to gerrymander throughout the country. But
Mm,
ultimately, it's not good enough to make it through one chamber. Making it through the House is only half of the equation. It's got to make it through the Senate. And every time that we look at the freedoms that we are trying to figure out how it is that we lost them, whether we're talking about reproductive access, whether we're talking about voting rights access, or whether we talk about the diminution of the Civil Rights Act as we see the anti DEI policies on full display, it all comes down to the Senate. When you look at which body has given license and authority for this president and his administration to act with impunity, it is the United States Supreme Court that only gets there because of the United States Senate and whether or
mm,
not those members of the Senate actually confirm people to the judiciary for a lifetime. And if we will recall, we didn't have the numbers in the Senate. And so therefore they held up an Obama appointee and just held that seat vacant and gave it to Trump. And then Trump made another one get out. And then another one ended up dying. And they died with less time on the clock than Obama had when he should have been able to have a nominee. Yet they
mm,
changed the rules of the game because they had the numbers. And so when I think about the fight and people say, well, what's the difference in the House and the Senate? It's like we started the fight in the House, but we have not finished that fight in the Senate. Where was he impeached? In the House. Did he get convicted?
right.
No. And that was because of the Senate. And so I think what matters most is that people understand that it's not just a vote for our healthcare and making sure that we have access. It's not just a vote for rolling back the tariffs or implementing the legislation to fairly tax billionaires and corporations. It's not just a matter of drafting those bills and getting them out of the House. We can't get the relief that we so need and we're seeking without changing the numbers in the Senate.
Hmm.
And Texas is key to doing that so that we can have the relief that we need in our state, but also in this entire country.
Yeah, no, the numbers matter, right? And speaking of numbers, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, right? You're going after a seat that is in essence an uphill battle, right? I don't think a Democrat has held this seat in Texas in 3 decades, I believe. And you're also coming from a state where women, people of color, and you being both, don't necessarily get big shots like this. So we see this primary season has been incredibly intense. It's getting
Mhm,
messy, right? At times it
mhm,
has been messy with a lot of focus on
mhm,
personalities rather than solutions.
mhm.
But one thing I'll say when I hear your constituents talk, they're a little tired of the noise. So when you strip all of that away, right? Why Jasmine Crockett for this moment? Like what do you have that is required to govern in the time that we're in right now?
Yeah, so if we just do what people should do is judge people by their credentials, there's only one person that's qualified. Imma just be real. When you serve in the state house, which I've done that, you represent a total of 177,000 people. When you serve in the US House, you service 766,000 people. The state of Texas is a total of 30 million people. And
Mhm.
so I know what it is to have a budget that is $17,000 a month to run your entire office versus having a $2 million a year budget and having to run that office. I also understand, what federal laws are and how it works on the federal level
Mhm.
versus someone who I'm not saying that my opponent doesn't have the ability to learn, but I don't know that we have the time for someone to be learning on the job in this specific moment, right?
Yeah.
So you have someone who has actually more experience on the federal level than I ever had on the state level. In addition to that, when we're talking about actually being able to win, and what the job is, let me go back to the qualifications. I talked about the Supreme Court justices and I talked about the judiciary as a whole. The only body that has actual direct oversight over the Supreme Court is the United States Senate. And so having someone who is legally trained,
Mm.
especially as those other justices are coming through trying to become a judge, listen, I'm not just legally trained. I have practiced law in both state and federal courts, and I know what a good judge looks and sounds like and am able to ring the alarms and hopefully stop some of the bad appointees, if that's what they look like, Eileen Cannon, when they're coming through until instead of waiting until the last minute. I also owned my own small business.
Yeah.
And also, while serving on the federal level, I think that I've been everything that Texas is. I currently serve on judiciary, which we all know the incredible Barbara Jordan and the work that she did on the judiciary during the Nixon era.
Mhm.
Got that under my belt. In addition to that, I serve on the immigration subcommittee. Being that we are a border state and the border is always a constant conversation, I am well equipped to deal with those conversations, both on the federal level as well as the state level. As I was on the committee of jurisdiction that was dealing with Operation Lone Star, which was the state program that they had going on.
Yeah.
In addition to that, um, you know, the thing that matters most is that most people are over the Democrats as a party. You can look at the numbers are not good. They don't believe that the Democrats have what it takes to fight. We have a historic number of Republicans and Democrats that are both leaving the House and the Senate in this moment. And it literally is because they don't know how to deal with this moment.
Mhm.
I still find my challenges, I'm not going to lie, but I think the one thing that people can be assured of is that Crockett will not back down from a fight. She will not cower. She will not go into a corner. She will not be scared. I can't say what my opponent would do because most people cannot project on who someone would be, but I know that people know who I am. I
Yeah.
can tell you that the only time we've ever had to engage in a fight together when we both served in the state house, that was when we broke quorum. I can tell you that my opponent decided to go back and give the Republicans quorum instead of continuing to fight. That is the only thing that I know as far as our pure resumes. My opponent has taught school, which my dad taught school, my stepmom taught school. That is his background. So I
Mhm.
don't have any issues with that. But he taught at a charter school for 2 years. And then he went into politics and he started to consult for charter schools. That's his entire actual resume. I mean, when it comes down to it, you've got somebody who has a pretty hefty resume prior to entering elected office and has a resume for this specific moment. And I think that those are really the big differences. When you talk about the noise, I do want to be clear because like I just want to confront it face on. Like I've been a black woman my whole life. You
Born this
think
way.
you think I didn't think about these things? You think
Mhm.
I was unaware that I was a black woman when I ran for any of the offices that I held?
Mhm.
You think I didn't realize that? Like I know this, right? And as I've tried to tell people over and over, we don't live in Iowa, right? Like demographically, what the Democrats or anybody else has never tried is a Black woman statewide in this way, right? But when we look at who is the base of the Democratic Party, no matter where you look in this country, the base is Black women, right?
Mhm.
So when you're starting to talk about races that may be on the margins, the question is, how do you energize those people that you know will be solid for your side? So, like, numbers show I'm really strong with Black women. I'm strong with Black men. Right behind Black men is Latinas. They're almost right up there with Black men. We also know that I perform very strongly with what we would consider to be the working class.
Mhm.
And Democrats have been losing the working class. So when you're looking at pulling back that coalition, when they're saying, oh, we're losing Latinos, we're losing Black men, we're losing the working class, these are the people that make up the base of my support. And so I think it's important to kind of just talk about that and recognize that 61% of this state is people of color. So the people that want to push this narrative that only a white man can win, I've got news for them. We've tried that if it's strictly about race and gender. We've tried that over and over the last 30 years.
Yeah. And
It's
and
not.
it sounds like these lines are being colored now by socioeconomic status more than, color. You mentioned owning, your own small business, but also that you poll really well with the working class. Let's talk Texas. Both of us are transplants, right, who have made this
Yep.
state home. Texas likes their money, and I like that
Yeah.
for Texas because if you are here with some grit, you can make a bag. So right now, Texas is growing really fast. I heard yesterday Ross Perot talk about another 4 million people who are about to, come to this state because of the opportunity. So when you look at this primary and Texas voters who are going to decide if you get on that ballot, talk to them about that growth, right? And how they get to share in things like the Texas Stock Exchange that's getting ready to launch and these AI data centers and crypto miners mining. But at the same time, how do you also talk to Texas voters about these housing costs that are going up because people like me are moving in, right? The congestion, the being priced out. So, as a senator from a state that prides itself on being business friendly in particular, how do you ensure economic growth benefits for everyday Texans so that we can get away from like the personal stuff, the color, the gender, all of that, right? How do you make sure they know their pockets are good with you?
Yeah, I think that that's such an excellent point. You packed a lot into that question. So let's go ahead and start unpacking it. So number one, we have to have policies, which our policy page will hopefully launch before the weekend.
Hmm.
Because I don't think I get to say that I have experience and then I don't actually lay out my receipts for what it is that I've filed and what I've been working on.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times housing policy doesn't go viral, right? Like those aren't the viral moments,
Hmm.
but seeing and understanding the legislation that I've worked on. So you're right. There's a couple of things that are straining our housing cost, whether you're renting or buying. And part of it is the demand. In fact, a good portion of it is the demand and us not meeting the housing supply. And so when you have high demand and low supply, that means costs are high. So I do have bills that are specifically around increasing that. But I want to kind of not silo any of this off and pull it all together.
Hmm.
So you talk about the AI data centers. You talk about the growth, and Texas is known for being very business friendly. And frankly, I do believe that's one of the reasons that we have a surplus when it comes down to our budget. We don't have income taxes that people have to worry about, but you do end up still really benefiting from these companies. So the question is, will you have representation that will speak out, that will support and work hand in hand with your local government, whether it's county, city, the state gets a little tricky. But hey, I'm down to work with the state when they're really ready to work. To do things like, okay, if you're gonna come in and take resources out of our community and you're gonna benefit from this business friendly environment, then you need to make the investments to our infrastructure. So, what do I mean? When you start to talk about AI centers, data centers specifically, and the drain that they put on the crypto as well, overall, the drain that they put on our energy supply,
Mhm.
it is important to basically not allow people to come in and pull on our energy when we know that our grid is trash, right? So, how can you make this mutually beneficial, right? This comes down to, having advocates in the form of elected officials that are going to advocate for our communities. So if you make them invest in the infrastructure, whether it's around the water, because water is a big issue as it relates to the AI data centers as well.
Mhm.
And it's not just how much water, but it's also the contamination of the water that we have to be good on. Then you require, you say, yo, y'all can come in. This means, some jobs for us, right? But let's go ahead and get a few more jobs because we need to go ahead and build this infrastructure that is going to be laid because you are profiting from us. So I think that when you do things like that, and if you have better infrastructure around water, better infrastructure around energy, then that promotes growth for those areas in those communities, right? Whether it's other businesses that end up, moving in, or whether it is housing, right? Right now, we have a lot of people that are not okay with the type of growth. And I think that there is a balance that you strike
Mhm.
because we do want those revenues coming in, but at what cost, right? And I think that what we see out of the state government is they don't care about the cost. They just like, oh, keep that over there in those communities that they feel like are okay to dump into. And this is where it's so important that you have elected officials on all levels of government that are going to work together to make sure that it's mutually beneficial. I think that if we work on mutually beneficial things, we can see innovation and make sure that the United States doesn't fall behind. Make sure that Texas is leading in innovation as we historically have. The chips are a result of Texas.
Right.
So I think we can do both. I just think we have an imbalance where we're only doing one and not the other.
Mhm.
And I think this does come down to making sure that you have elected officials that are promoting an agenda that is going to be smart and powerful for the people as well.
Mhm. I I like that you talked about even adverse things being mutually beneficial, right? Like if there's something that could potentially hurt you, right? You can still figure out a way to benefit from it. Texas has been really the center of the fight of this kind of cultural war that has centered education. And I mean, Texas is a first in a lot of things. Things tend to start here and then kind of sprawl out, right, to other states. So, Texas recently implemented this private school voucher, right? And I'm getting to this growth and workforce readiness via education in essence. So they implemented these private school vouchers, expanding options for some families, right? And some is in real thick quotes. But also raising serious concerns about public school funding, higher education access, workforce readiness. So regardless of where your constituents, right? The folks who are going to vote in this primary fall ideologically. This is a reality. So, how do you make sure that families are able to take advantage of these vouchers because they're here, but also that for families that decide to stay the public route, right, that they have the funding to make sure that their kids can take advantage of that growing workforce that we're seeing in this state?
This is a difficult question because when it comes to education, especially the level of education that we're talking about, it is primarily a state issue, which is why the state did what they did. What I want people to know and believe is that they deserve better. They deserve better than their tax dollars, their very public tax dollars being hijacked. And this is another way of the Republicans transferring wealth, right? Taking dollars from people that may need it the most, siphoning them off, and giving it to the one percenters. The reason that I say the one percenters is because there is no preclusion that says, oh, if you make X amount of dollars, then you can't partake in the benefit of getting these dollars to basically reduce your private school tax bill or your private school tuition bill. And the reason that I bring this up about the transfer of wealth is because this is just what Republicans keep doing. On the backs of working class and poor people, they are constantly taking from them for the benefit of the one percenters. And so while your question, I get it, and I'm getting there, talks about like, well, how do you as a working class or even, working poor, how is it that you can also get your kid into, say, one of these fancy schmancy private schools? The problem that we have with private schools, they don't have to take your kid.
Mhm.
They don't have to. Like, that is one of the reasons that it is very inequitable to take these public dollars and do this. They can reject your child. And we know that when it comes to uniquely abled students, public education is absolutely necessary because they have to make sure that they're making those accommodations. Private school, they can be like, we don't do that over here,
Yeah.
right? So like that's why it's so insidious, and we know that public schools have not ever gotten their fair shake, ever gotten their fair dollar. And now we are basically going to siphon off more dollars. So, what can I say? I can say absolutely get involved. Make sure you know what's going on at your own school boards. And let's do everything that we can to support our public schools. Encourage others to support our public schools and not take those dollars out.
Mhm.
Because I just don't want them to be deprived of more money. If for some reason you're just like, this ain't gonna work, then I say do everything that you can to make sure that you can force them to take your kid. I mean, that's, but the problem is you can't force them,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't force them. There is no oversight. I mean, it is wild and it is dangerous. And for me on the federal level, I have legislation to do everything to try to pump additional dollars into our public schools in various ways, whether it's money for kiddos to eat. We know that some school districts make really difficult decisions. And so when they're trying to kind of play with their dollars, this may be dollars that can relieve them a little bit if we can get more dollars in for the kiddos that are hungry. We also propose putting more dollars in for mental health
Mm.
providers, which is also something that our public schools were able to take advantage of in the midst of a lot of the COVID dollars that were coming down and the benefits that they saw, especially in light of kind of what was going on in COVID, but also just giving them the support that they need around some of the unique challenges that school children face that you and I never faced, right? Like when we went to school, we never had to do active shooter drills. Instead, we did like fire drills or
That's right.
tornado drills or something like
Yeah.
that. And so giving them more resources because I know I've talked to some of my school districts and they're like, it's been so helpful, not just for the students, but for the teachers to be able to have the extra hands to find out the reasons for some of our kiddos falling behind and really kind of digging into that and not putting that on the actual teacher in the classroom. It's helped everyone. And so some of my school districts have tried to sustain this without that sustained funding.
Mm.
So, I do have bills that are for the purpose of trying to get some dollars down for that as well.
Yeah.
And that then would allow some of our public schools to shift some of their dollars to other things. But I am very concerned about what is going to take place. And I think it is going to be important for people to start to talk to their friends and family members in rural Texas as well. We know when the governor was trying to push this before, he lost mostly because rural elected representatives also knew how detrimental this would be to their rural schools. And so he then put a lot of money because we have no limits whatsoever in
Mhm.
Texas races. He
Mhm.
put a lot of money into making sure that he could primary and support people that would just do whatever he wanted them to do. And
Absolutely.
now that people will start to really feel the effects, I think that we may be able to team up big city and rural Texas and reverse course.
I like that. I like the big cousin metaphor. I think the governor was able to do a lot of what he did too because the narrative was co-opted and there was this, hey, this is about choice, right? This is about a
Mhm,
family's ability to make a
mhm,
choice for their student, even though we know the numbers show that for the most part, people who are taking advantage of these vouchers, say in Arizona that trialed this years ago, those kids were already in private school.
mhm,
They had never been to a public school in their
mhm.
life. So you're 100% in that these folks had already been able to afford private school for their children, and they took advantage of public tax dollars. But the misinformation was where I heard a lot of people beginning to adopt this narrative that Greg Abbott was putting out there. So I actually want to talk about misinformation and public trust and really like credible sources where people are getting their information. Let's talk about it, right? Recently, an influencer created a video concerning Colin Allred and James that went viral, right? Sparking confusion and a lot of conversation about what was real and what wasn't. So I think public trust is so fragile right now. Where people are getting information can be anywhere from this conversation to, a meme, right? How important do you think it is for elected officials in particular to rely on credible, verified sources when consuming and sharing information? And how do you see your role as our potential senator in strengthening that public trust and making sure that people are making informed decisions?
Yeah, I think, it is so critical. We sat in a hearing in judiciary or a markup in judiciary this week where they were sharing all kinds of lies of stories, like literally things that have been proven like false. You had sitting members of Congress. They were like, "Oh, this is why we got to do this bill because of this." And we're like,
Hmm.
"Actually, like this has been debunked like
Like,
50
who told you
times."
that? Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, and so, people have to understand that a lot of this is part of an agenda, a very
Mm,
insidious agenda. There are people that are knowing that they're spreading falsehoods, and they don't care because it gets
mm,
at their agenda. And so I do think that even in this race, one of the reasons, even though, $6 million has already been spent to by my opponent boosting his candidacy just since January.
mm,
And now another $4 million from a super PAC has been purchased on behalf of my primary opponent. I think the reason they're having to spend so much is because people are like, we don't know you. Like, who are you? Where'd you come from? Like, who
mhm,
are you? And it is because I didn't just pop up overnight. Um, I have a rapport with Texans and voters as a whole, and they know who I am. And for better, for worse, whatever, they know who I am, right? I think on any given issue, they can almost predict exactly where I will be,
mm,
because they know who I am. And I think it is important to have a relationship of trust. And I think when people don't know you, it's real easy to be like, oh, wait a minute. So as it relates to the situation that happened with Morgan, the influencer who basically outed her candidate. Like this was her candidate. I mean, I don't know if he's still her candidate, but for sure,
mhm,
the only reason this interaction took place is because she is a black woman was supporting his candidacy back in September over Colin Allred, who was at the time running, and Jasmine was nowhere to be found in this discourse.
right,
And Morgan, started to get concerned as James Carville, who has come back like tales from the crypt, and decided to enter the chat, right? And has had very strong words since the day that I announced. And we know that Carville is working with the Tallarico camp. He's been sending out text messages and emails on behalf of him. And Morgan, as a black woman, was just concerned because um, Carville has been putting out this anti woke stuff
Mhm.
that sounds more like anti-black. Okay. So Morgan, as a supporter, which, this is what you want your people who are on your side to do. You want them to be real with you. You don't want them to be cheerleaders. You want them to make sure that you engage in like real critical thinking. And so she has a perspective that maybe others on his team did not have. And so she offered that critique. And she was trying and trying to talk to them. And they said, oh, you can talk to him in person. And so that's what she did. And, his response to just kind of like, hey, maybe tell him to tone it down, or maybe just distance yourself because this isn't really helpful as it relates to you getting more support from the Black community from the perspective of a Black woman.
Mm.
And in response, according to Morgan's account, it was that he was like, well, I didn't plan to run against a mediocre Black man, or I was planning to run against a mediocre Black man, not a qualified Black woman.
Mm.
Now, Colin Allred, if you know anything about him, he is not one to really pop off. People can't say the same about me, but
No, he be
that is
chilling.
not who he is. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not who he is, right?
Mhm.
And I think this really became a big story for two reasons. Number one, as soon as Morgan put it on IG, which there were plenty of people that had sent it to me. I think I was traveling on that day. And so like it was in my text messages, but like I hadn't watched it. I didn't know what was what. And then I started getting all these other messages. They took it down, they took it down, they took it down. I'm like, took it down what? And they're like, oh, the video. And I'm like, in my text message, I can still see the picture of the video. So I'm like,
Mhm.
what? Like, what? So I was like, let me click this video. Let me see like what the fuss is about. And it wasn't there when I clicked it. And so then I was like, okay, so what are y'all saying? They were like, Morgan put up a video. It was about an interaction with Tallarico, and Tallarico's team got it taken down within like less than an hour. So I said, well, how do y'all know that, they were like, accounts don't disappear that fast. Her account was suspended. And I was like, yeah, I know this. And see, the thing is, when you're a lawmaker, we have access to lobbyists.
Mhm.
Lobbyists for, somebody hacked our account at some point, my IG. And at that point in time, I was almost to 2 million followers. We immediately got on the phone. And I was like, somebody took our account. They changed everything. We need y'all to fix this. We don't know if they're going to try to post nudes. We don't know what they up to, but like, we
Mhm.
got to get our account back.
Mhm.
And so they did. Like, we have access. And so they were like, yo, we know how this stuff, it was influencers that were hitting me. We know how this stuff works. They made a phone call. I know how this stuff works. I knew a
Mhm.
phone call had been made. I'm just saying. Not saying who made it, but I know a phone call had absolutely been made, right? So I was like, well, what was in the video that was so bad that it had to be pulled down? And so I was trying to see if somebody had a screen recorded or whatever. So then that's when somebody on my team was like, oh, it's on TikTok. Like, and they sent me the TikTok of the video. And so I was like, well, first of all, this shouldn't have gotten taken down and definitely should not have gotten somebody's account completely like suspended.
Yeah.
Um, and it felt more like a Trump thing. That's what the Republicans do. So anyway, so I watched the video and I was like, okay. But like I wasn't there and like I don't know Morgan and I didn't believe she had a reason to lie, but I
Mhm.
went to sleep. I watched the video. The next morning, she had done a follow-up video, which was more so like her receipts, right? Like, oh, y'all asked me like how is it? Because of course you can't believe the Black woman. So she then was like, hey, just so y'all know, when this happened, I contemporaneously text messaged one of my friends. Now, as a lawyer, that is very compelling. That is very compelling.
Mhm.
If you did something in that moment and it's not like, oh, it just, So, and she had the pictures showing where she was on that day, able to show that that's where he was on that day, all the things. So I was like, okay, well, obviously, by this point, Colin Allred has seen all the noise
Right.
and was convinced as well as a trained attorney. And so he ends up doing his video popping off, and I'm like, I ain't never seen this out of Colin as somebody who's worked with him and has known him since before either one of us was ever elected to office.
Mhm.
So I see all this happen and frankly, didn't know what the Tallarico camp would do. The Tallarico camp releases a statement not denying that he knows Morgan, not denying that he engaged in this conversation, completely believing that it was a private conversation, which I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay, so some you didn't want to be public,"
Mhm.
right? And then basically saying, "Well, yes, I complimented the congresswoman, but I demeaned his campaign." And for me, that doesn't ring true in my ears because if you're saying, "Oh, this talented black woman," then the opposite of that would be this untalented. You see what I'm saying? Like you wouldn't
Mm.
be like, "She's a talented person and his campaign is mediocre." Like that's not how it would go. So,
Logic, yeah.
you believe what you wanna believe or whatever, but I think the bigger concern for many people and the anxiety specifically for black people is around this mistrust of certain people when it comes to us in the first place, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like if you said something that because it was labeled a misinterpretation, so now she don't know how to interpret what she heard either. If you would feel so comfortable to say something like this to a black woman, what are you saying to maybe non-black people? I think that that is the question, and so, people will arrive at whatever conclusions. They will take this information for whatever they want to take it for. I personally want to focus on who can deliver for the people,
Mhm.
who's going to be able to fight for the people, who has a track record, because this is the part of politics that people hate is all of this other, all of this stuff about my race or my gender, all this stuff about, another actually the previous front runner's race,
Yeah.
right? And linking him to mediocrity as a very accomplished attorney, former elected, like that's the kind of stuff that turns people off and don't it makes them say, "You know what? Both sides are the same." And
Yeah.
I have felt that on so many levels for a long time is that I understand people that are like, "What's the point in voting? And why should I pick one or the other? Because it's all the same with them." And I think that that is one of the reasons that I was like, in this moment, I have to be the person that people know it's gonna be real. Everybody knows that ain't nobody telling me what to say. They know
Mhm.
that I say the very real things, even if it's things that make people get offended. Like get offended when my policies are jacked up, right? I'm not here to offend people, but I'm also not here trying to work and make sure that I'm just saying what you want me to say.
Mhm.
I'm here and I'm fighting because literally people are dying. Like I don't get why that's so difficult for people to conceptualize that like everything that I've been fighting for my entire career from being a public defender has always been about fighting for people that most people want to throw away, most people have forgotten, most people ignore. That is who I am.
Yeah.
Not in a campaign all of a sudden I'm becoming something. No, 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 no. Go back. Go back and see who it is that I've been fighting for decades
Mhm.
and look at my legislation and it rings true. So I think building a rapport and having trust is what matters most. And I think that that's why there have been coordinated attacks both by the Democrats and the Republicans to demean that trust that people have built for me.
Yeah. No, I think you're right in that people have become apathetic when it comes to politics in our country because and you said it earlier, right? We have the Democrats who, for the most part are in my opinion losing a lot of once strong supporters because number one, it looks like there's no strategy, and then we see the infighting, and then we see the Democrats kind of playing by the rules while the GOP is over here just in the wild, wild west, right? Like
Yep.
there are no rules anymore.
Yep.
But I think where you stand out, and you said it again, is that you show up with a sense of sincerity that I think people can feel even through the TV, right? Like the viral moments are great, but I think they go harder because we know, like, oh, she just came up with that off the top of her head.
Yes.
Like she,
Yes.
yeah, like she felt that in the moment and she just said it. So I'm, and this is my last question. I want you to talk to people about what makes you ready for this moment. So your background spans, faith, law, governing. I think was your daddy a preacher? Did I
Yes.
remember? Yes.
Mhm.
So daddy was a preacher. You know, you've been close to the fire for a long time. You became a civil rights attorney, right? You served in the Texas House and all Congress. So at a time where Texans and honestly the nation, we're facing economic pressures, global instability. I think this is a completely different international stage than any of us have ever lived through in our
Mhm.
generation. We got cultural change. How is your life experience, right? All of those things that has shaped Jasmine Crockett to be this sincere person. Like, how does that translate into how you're going to lead and what you do to set up Texas and the nation for like the next decade?
A lot of people have wondered so much about the Senate. There's always these questions about the Senate and Democrats as a whole, but definitely as the government reopened and there were senators that decided to give the Republicans what they needed,
Mm,
as we are dealing with some of the most trying times that we've seen. So that was as they were acquiescing to the idea of allowing the tax subsidies around healthcare to expire, instead of continuing to maintain that fight because the Republicans were losing that fight. So why is it that you're giving in? Um, Same thing as it relates to ICE, right? Like, unfortunately, the House gave them the votes that they needed, passed the appropriations over to the Senate side, and then the Senate came back, did not pass it exactly as it was, which was still a shock that they didn't just go along to get along. So I guess we got to thank goodness for the small win, but they did pass a 2-week continuing resolution specifically for DHS and around ICE. And this is in the wake of Preddy's death. And we know that the Republicans are losing this fight. You had Greg Abbott come out and say, I think we need to recalibrate. He ain't just do that out of goodwill. I
mhm,
mean, I don't know what he's done out of goodwill, right? Like this is polling, right? We know that here just a couple of days ago, the president was like, maybe we can have a softer touch, right? Like they're not
mhm,
doing this because they believe it. They ended up saying, well, we'll give you Bovino, right? Even though we're going to put in Tom Homan. Like
yeah,
they are doing this because they are losing the narrative as it relates to all the stuff that he wanted people to believe that the immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. The immigrants are the rapists and the criminals. They are losing the plot because number one, you going out and you killing U.S. citizens. So you tell me what ICE got to do with that, right?
mhm,
Like they are losing. Like they were winning so long as they could make a boogeyman and scare people and make it seem like the Democrats were okay with your cities being overrun with crime from these people that aren't vetted and they're coming to hurt us. They were good when they could create the boogeyman. Now they have lost the plot, right?
mhm,
And they're losing. I mean, even in North Texas, there was recently a congressman who was specifically talking about, I think we went too far. I think we went
mm,
too far when we started going and getting the dishwasher or this person or that person or whatever, right? So why is it that it seems like as soon as we start winning, the Democrats just know how to lose, right? And so I think that's what it's about. I think it's about not just Democrats, but like the Republicans are only responding because they're losing with everybody. We just swung a seat 30 points in Texas.
mhm,
That tells you everything that you need to know. It's about the moment that we're in. So they want you to believe what we can't do. They want you to believe all this nonsense, but they have already invested $50 million in the Republican primary to try to prop up the incumbent while also trying to make you believe that they are good to go in Texas and that it's
mhm,
not in play. We know that the governor is investing $90 million in Harris County alone in this election cycle. One county, $90 million. But they
mhm,
want you to believe that your vote doesn't count. They want you to believe that we don't have a chance. Texas is a non voting state. I am tired of the pundits from everywhere else saying, you know what? We just got to go get those Republicans. Whatever Republicans are going to cross over, they're going to cross over because the Republicans have made life hell for them. It doesn't matter who the Democrat is. There is no Democrat is going to make somebody who literally says my identity, a part of my identity is being a Republican crossover. They're going to cross over because of their circumstances right now.
mhm,
That is what we are seeing. It didn't matter. Generic Democrats are swinging seats no less than 10 points. That is where the crossover is coming from. The question is, who can excite and invigorate and make the base believe? When is the last time we had that? Because we know even when it came down to our vice president, who everybody knows I love dearly, we know that there was, she had agreed to put a Republican in her administration.
Mhm.
We know that Liz Cheney was out there campaigning for her. We know all the things. And Republicans still chose to vote for a 34 count convicted felon over a qualified candidate. We know that. So is the win really in trying to do what we've done over and over and over? Or maybe we need to go ahead and take care of home. And this doesn't mean that we're against other people joining the coalition. That's not what it means. It's about where are we going to invest our energy. And right now, I think that that's what you see in this election. You have one person that is fighting to make sure that we can excite the people that normally don't come out.
Mhm.
And then we have another strategy that, as the Houston Chronicle recently laid out, they didn't say that I didn't have the qualifications. Unlike the San Antonio Express that endorsed my candidacy, they went to qualifications. They went to the level of policy depth that I have. But the Houston Chronicle, they number one called me a dog. And number two, they said that we need to go ahead and make sure that we get moderate Republicans.
Hmm.
If the electorate remains the same that it's been for the last 30 years, I have news for you. We're going to lose.
Yeah.
We have to expand the electorate. We have to get more people to engage. And the people that haven't been engaging are Black and brown. That's who's not been engaging.
Mhm.
And we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get them to come out. That is what I am committed to. And it doesn't mean that I can't go into white rural America or white rural Texas because I can, because I live there,
Mhm.
because I served on the agriculture committee, because I understand the struggles of both rural Texas, urban Texas, as well as suburban Texas.
Mm.
Stop judging me and limiting me by what you see and actually understand the content of who I am. And there is no candidate in this race that has the ability to not only go to church on Sunday,
That's
but to
it.
hit the clubs on the weekends
Come
and get
on.
in the DJ booth as I've been doing,
And
but
I think
also
you tote
go.
your gun too. I think you a real Texan
I
now.
am a gun-toting Texan, that's right. Who also was licensed to carry, to be clear.
Yes.
License, has my guns, but also, as we drop this issues page, you're gonna see I've driven farm equipment, y'all. Like, I mean, I know that that's not the stuff that goes viral, but there is actual video footage. You will see a photo, because that goes into one of our policy areas of me climbing down or up farm equipment that I literally have driven. I
I
can
think you should
do
trade
what
in the
most.
bus and just ride around on, like, farm equipment, me personally. I think you should wrap that. That'll get you rural Texas right there.
That is so funny. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, no, thank you, Jasmine. I know you have been doing work, y'all. We tried to get this scheduled like 5 times, and sis was in the chamber getting on people's behind. So thank you for taking the time with us today. Thank you for going into your background, your policies, your platform, because I think we see a lot of the viral moments and it's amazing, right? We love the energy. We love that you draw the people, but at the end of the day, when you get in that seat, you have to legislate. You
Yeah.
have to govern. So thank you for walking us through that. And yeah, we'll be watching. We'll continue to make sure that we stay close to the fire.
All right. I appreciate you. Have a good
All
one.
right. It was good to see you.
Good to see you.